everybody, welcome back. Thrilled to have you here. I've got a lot of shows scheduled this week. So if you can't see this one live, don't worry, you're going to catch a few more. And all these episodes are going to be published in a Tuesday, Thursday sequence over the next couple of years. So, check in at bizbookpublishinghub.com to find these episodes. Without any further delay, let me do this introduction. Do you ever feel like your words have to be perfect before they see the light of day? You're not alone. Many first-time authors get stuck in this cycle, endlessly tweaking sentences. But the truth is, your first draft isn't meant to be flawless. It's meant to be a foundation. Writing a book is a process, one that will challenge and refine not only your ideas, but your voice too. Embracing imperfection is key because it allows you to move forward, learn, and create something that can be polished into a masterpiece later. I can introduce you to several BizBook Publishing Hub partners. These are experts who can help you get through the writing process. You can check out this free resource at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Now, a quick word from our sponsor. All right, with that, let's dive into today's panel. Our authors will share their author journeys. With me is Axel Meierhoefer, wrote The Ideal Wealth Grower, How to Journey to the Time Freedom Point and Beyond, which offers practical, anecdotal guide to real estate investment, drawing on over 20 years of experience to help readers navigate their investment journey and achieve financial independence. We also have with us today Barrie Atkin, who wrote Hate Fundraising, How to Become Comfortable Asking for Money, which is an invaluable skill at this moment. Every cause you care about needs funds. And with this book, you can put the cause first and leave behind your angst. Marlo Lyons wrote Wanted, A New Career, the definitive playbook for transitioning to a new career or finding your dream job. This is a step-by-step playbook that helps individuals leverage transferable skills, overcome career obstacles, and confidently transition to their dream job, even without prior experience in the new field. Please join me in welcoming Axel, Barrie, and Marlo. Axel, I'm going to kick this first question over to you just to give us a little better sense of who your audience was for this book that you wrote. Who is the ideal reader that you had in mind? And welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Robbie, for having me. The ideal reader, I would say, is kind of three groups of people. The first group are people who are interested on how can I get to early retirement. This is kind of the time freedom point you mentioned in the introduction, as early as possible. The second group, I call them Henrys. That stands for high earning, not rich yet. So, like somebody who says real estate seems to be a good place to invest, but I'm afraid to do it on my own and may not necessarily want to jump into a big mentoring program right away. So I hope the book builds a bridge for anybody who is kind of curious. And the third group of people are people who have realized that they have done other investments that may not have worked out as well as they had anticipated, and now realize, okay, we need to have something that retains its value and still pays me something every month to supplement Social Security or whatever other things they have done for their retirement. So those are the three groups the book was made for.
Axel, you said a lot of really awesome things about who you identify, but Henry stood out to me. I'd never heard that before. And it's like, wow, that is such a good description for that audience. So thank you for that. High earning, not yet rich. What was it?
Rich yet. Yeah.
Not rich yet. Love it. Oh my God. Barrie, how about you? Who did you write your book for? Who's the audience that you had in mind?
Thanks, Robbie. I'm delighted to be here and join this whole group. So you mentioned the angst of fundraising, and so many people have that angst. So many people would prefer to go to the dentist and have a tooth pulled than ask someone for money. This book is for people associated with not-for-profits, which is a lot of people, whether they're a volunteer, an executive director, a board member, or just a staff member, or not just a staff member, but a staff member who is involved. And everybody is asked to fundraise in some way at some time. And this helps get over the angst, as Robbie mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a background in fundraising, as you know, Barrie, and taught fundraising for a bit. So I actually have a deeply held belief that people can learn this skill. I know for some people it seems like, oh, I can never figure this out. But I've seen transformations happen when people get their head around it. So I'm excited to share your book with everyone. And now we'll come over here to Marlo. Marlo, tell us, who did you write this book for?
Thanks for having me, Robbie. And Barrie, I can't wait to send your book to one of my clients who just took a CEO job at a nonprofit. So I'm very excited. I'm actually going to order it. So my book, Wanted a New Career, is for people who are unhappy or just content or complacent, but they're not fulfilled in their careers. A lot of people think that they can compartmentalize their career over here and the rest of their life is happy and fulfilled, but they can't see them doing the same job for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And they keep shoving it off because they don't know what they want to do. And so the book answers the question, what do I want to do? It helps them answer that question. And not just what they can do, but what do I want to do? And then it gives those actionable steps to pursue a fulfilling career with vigor. And, it helps people come out of that stage of, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to do. And therefore, I'm going to ignore it.
So, now, Marlo, is this your first book?
That was my first book. Funny enough, you should ask. My second book comes out November 29th. So yes, Wanted, my first career is for college students. So it's a take off the first book, but it's for college students and helps them figure out what they want. Because as we know, we've all entered college, at least I did. I entered college not knowing what I wanted to do and went through 3 different careers, which is the crux of the Wanted a New Career book.
So at the time of this recording, that's a couple of weeks away, but when this comes out, your second book will already be available on Amazon. We'll make sure to get the link added to the show notes, and we'll have to have you back for the next cross promotion focusing on that book. So I was just curious, Marlo, when you were getting ready to write this first book, it sounds like you had a pretty clearly defined audience in mind. Was there a really good sense of what success would look like for you when you were getting ready? Like, what were the metrics that you were back then? Not, it's changed probably, I imagine, since then. But back then, what were some of the metrics that you were going to use to know, yeah, this book's on the right track. This feels like a success. Was it sales? Was it reviews? Was it, what was it that we were thinking about?
It's different than what most people would think. Most people would think it would be sales. I want to make a lot of money. But for me, it was really about impact. It was about, how is this book going to resonate with readers? Can I provide them actionable guidance? And, it's called the definitive playbook for a reason, because I wanted to help people reassess where they were in their lives and be able to take those actionable steps. So for me, I define success and metrics really as getting positive feedback and reviews, which I did, which is great. Hearing from people around the globe, which I do. I get emails, people saying that this has completely changed their lives. Having that extended reach globally, that was important to me. Mm-hmm. I also just wanted to provide true value. I wanted to see tangible results. And I use what's in that book is what I use when I'm coaching people, because I'm a certified executive and career coach. And I use the exact tools that are in the book with my clients. And so it's not like, oh, I wrote a book and I gave you half the notes. I gave you all the notes. I gave you everything I do. And so hitting the metrics of just seeing impact, seeing, people change their lives and find fulfilling lives was the big thing for me. And then, of course, there's always the byproduct of sales, right? Yeah. There's always the byproduct of, seeing the sales metrics rise. That's always nice. And it also has led to a bunch of opportunities. I write for HBR. I've been interviewed by CNN, Forbes, Business Insider, things like that. And so for me, impact was the key, and that has led to a whole bunch of other things.
Well, I want to circle back to you in a minute to talk about sort of what doors got opened, because I think authors, or I should say writers who are not yet published authors, can't visualize what those possibilities are. It's not clear to them. It's like an opaque. It's like the Jason Possible. You open a door into a room and find 3 more doors in front of you. Like, you can't see those 3 doors until you go into it.
Which ones you take? That's the big thing.
So, Barrie, you've written other books before. And this is one that's based on, like, you have a long history of working in fundraising and helping people with fundraising. And we didn't know when this book was being written how important it would be for people who had causes they cared about to start, finding ways to get activated, getting energized, and maybe fundraising was one method. So I've been working with you on your launch plan. Your book is being published as we speak. It's coming out right about now. So I'm curious, like, when you started writing the book, back a little while ago, what was important to you about writing this book, and what were some of those metrics you were going to be keeping an eye on as it came out?
Well, I started thinking about writing the book because one of the people I was mentoring in a brand new not-for-profit said, "You need to write a book. You have so much valuable information." I thought about it. I didn't get to write it then. I started it, put it aside, eventually got to it. Marlo, if I had had your book 20 years ago, I might not be on this path today, be somewhere else. But I really intended to, first of all, share some of my knowledge. And I gave lots of workshops around hate fundraising. And that's where I got the concepts in the book of the 20, 30, 40 reasons people hate fundraising, and then categorize them into areas, 6 overarching areas, and gave solutions. So it's solutions. I'm also hoping it's a business card for not-for-profit executive directors to then hire me, or boards to hire me to come in and train their boards. I love working with boards of not-for-profits, train them as I've done with some in the past around how to overcome their fear of fundraising, because board members really must be involved in fundraising.
Yes, I absolutely do. Axel, I'm going to ask you the same kind of question. I mean, you it feels like this is a passionate topic for you. I've heard you speak about this before, and you have a very specific audience, even with fun names. So when you were starting to do this, was this about leading into, like, this is similar to what Barrie said, like a calling card to get people to hire you to come speak on this topic? Were you interested in sales, reviews? Like, what was important to you as you were getting started?
Well, both what Marlo and Barrie said were considerations. One of the things that I had heard quite a few times through like postings in social media or during our podcast interview sessions, or when we were looking for people to come on, and then obviously when we did always do initial complimentary calls when somebody is maybe considering to come into the mentoring program, is that there is an emotional component to doing anything, like Barrie said, with money. It's one thing in the context of asking for it, but also when you want to put it, and so to speak, a lot of people say put it at risk. So for me, I got a bunch of feedback where people said, we don't really know you that well. We don't really know and understand the strategy behind all of this. It just sounds like a fitting title, this ideal wealth grower that we have for the business, that have for the book. And so I wanted to actually accomplish two things besides what Marlo already mentioned. That was, for one, to explain a little bit who am I, and show through that process that what I'm suggesting in the book, what we are actually doing, like Marlo said, I put everything out. Ideal and grower are also two abbreviations that we rarely have an opportunity to actually explain in detail. So in the book, I literally went letter by letter, sometimes 2 or 3 pages worth of why is this letter here? How does this overall fit into the bigger picture and into the strategy? So those two things were important to me. For one, to give people a relatively affordable opportunity to get to know me. And number two, to say, okay, you know, and I hate to say this in a panel discussion, but there are many, many, many offers out there today where you can consume on your own and at your own pace stuff. And you never really know if the people that actually put that together really did what's behind it themselves. And so the book is a little bit of a vehicle for people to see, okay, here's the strategy and here is how I applied it and what the results were. And I'm a normal person from a normal family. So I'm always saying, you know, if I can do it and write a book about it, then you can mainly be assured that you can do it too.
I have to give you all kudos because all three of you seem to have had a very thoughtful, strategic approach to writing a book with a clear audience, a message, and a desire for people to build trust with you, for you to educate your prospects about both the question that they know they have and they're willing to admit, and to help them start to realize maybe some issues, roadblocks, obstacles that might be in their way that they maybe hadn't even considered yet, and position you as that expert or guide, mentor who can help them achieve their actual goals and live the life they've been looking to have. So it's really great because a lot of times I do speak with authors about, thinking about launching their book with me, and the book's already written often when this question gets asked, and I say, well, tell me a little bit about how this book fits in your business plan, and like, what's it tie into, what's the next offer. And they had told me about their book for 5 minutes, like no problem. And when I asked that question, it's like I asked a gotcha question. They were like, yeah, Axel, what would you like to add?
Well, it's just kind of funny because you won't believe how many people, and I'm explicitly excluding you, Robbie, but lots of people told me, that's an awful title. How did you come up with this title? Right? It's not good for marketing. It's not for sales. It's not good for social media. It's not good for whatever. And I said, well, for me, it was important that there is a coherence between what the business is, what I'm preaching, what I'm putting in the podcast, and in this case, what I'm putting out in writing. Yes, it would be nice, like Marlo said, if it sells 100,000 copies, but the intention that I mentioned earlier is more important to me. And so the consistency, yes, I admit it's maybe not the flashiest title, but like you said,
Yeah, I think that Marlo, you similarly had to come up with a way to talk about your work and have it stick. I mean, this is hard. I think I have a title for one of my books, and my mentor suggested I do this. It's Croissants versus Bagels, which without the subtitle attached does not tell you what this is. And I said to her, I can do that for the business book. And she goes, yeah. And she like told me about another book with a very odd title. And I was like, okay. But the subtitle explains it, right? Strategic, effective, and inclusive networking at conferences. And then you're like, well, all right, I still don't know what that means. But when you learn what my technique's about, it's very sticky. And then all of a sudden people start walking around talking about croissants and bagels. And so I just think that it's about branding. That's what I really hear you saying. It's the branding piece. Similarly, I know Barrie has been talking about hate fundraising. Like that's the phrase that she's picked up. I had a talk that I did for a while called Getting Past the Fear of Asking, right? Like none of this is, listen, I want to tell listeners, if you have the ability to be clever and clear in your book title or your podcast title or your program title, do both. But if you cannot be clever and clear, please choose clear. Like sometimes we aim to be a little too clever, and then it just requires more explanation later. I want to shift us a little bit to how the book gets measured around reviews. And this is a really happy place for me. And I'm going to really focus on Marlo because it seems like you did a really focused job on this. Anytime people can get more than 20 reviews, it means that you really put a lot of effort into it. And you've got 58 ratings and 39 reviews. So just for those listening, the 58 rating. I don't pay attention to
it. Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
That means the stars. So anybody can leave a star rating, 1 through 5 star rating, whether or not they read your book. They don't have to leave any text with it. And so star ratings are not as hard to get as a written review. Written reviews definitely take effort. So again, you're really close to 50 written reviews. And so this tells me that you put some thought into this. Was this part of your initial launch plan, or was it something that happened later on or more organically, or you're just good at reminding people to do it? Like, tell me a little bit about how you approach, like first, why did you even approach launching with this sort of review process in mind? Like, how do you even come up with that being a metric? And then what did you do to actually get these folks to write reviews?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was anybody who's in the book, right? I wanted them to not buy the book. I wanted to give them a free book, right? Because they're in the book. But I also wanted them to write a verified review. So the first thing I did was I sent them an Amazon $10 gift card to buy the ebook themselves, so they wouldn't have to spend money. And I sent that within the hard copy book or the paperback book, right? And asked them, would you please write a review? How did that work? Well, maybe about half, right? Did something. I don't know what the other half did with their $10 gift card. And then the second thing I did was I just reached out to family and friends first and colleagues and connections and said, hey, I have this new book coming out. This might be relevant to you. It might be relevant to somebody else. But if you buy it, would you please write a review? And it's hard to get reviews. It really is. People don't want to put their name on the internet. I don't like to write reviews personally. And so I really just was concentrated about writing that. And then what I did was anybody who reached out to me for coaching and said they already bought the book, even if we met and we talked and they weren't ready for real coaching, that kind of thing, I would say, hey, it would be really great if you wrote a review. because if they had already bought the book, or some people I could tell in the middle of doing like a sample session, you would realize that they weren't ready for it or they couldn't afford it or whatever the case may be. And I would say, hey, you can always purchase the book. And if you do, please write a review. Right. So, and that was always in my follow-up email, you know, and so I think that's where I got reviews, and I have reviews all over the world. You can't see them all obviously in the US, but from what I understand, there's reviews all over the world because I see that the book is being bought all over the world. And I know that a number of those people have written me personally and said, hey, I just wrote you a really great review. I don't know if you can see it. So here it is. And so
well, the good news is that most reviews do end up coming into the US. And if you go to the very end of your reviews, there's a section that says from other countries. And I do see like the Canadian review, for instance, coming. Sometimes some reviews from Germany sometimes don't come over very quickly. Sometimes they do. I always try to find out where people would be posting it because it's more likely that I can go to their country Amazon site to check it out. So I want to just comment on a couple of things that you said, Marlo. One is I would be careful for those listening how you couch the offer of the $10 gift card. You can give it to them as a gift for, you know, being part of the experience, and you can suggest in the same, you know, letter that they buy the books. They can leave a verified review. We can't give people a gift to leave a review, or
correct. No, I did not do that.
Yeah.
Yes,
we just have to like.
I said,
we have to like write the frame.
Like it, right. If you, it was more of a if you feel like it. I'm not very good at asking for things.
Yeah.
So it was always a very soft, like, hey, you know, if you feel like it, would love it if you feel like leaving a review. It wasn't a you must write a review and purchase it, and that's why some didn't, and that's fine.
Right,
Totally
and
fine.
also you gave it to them without having gotten a review, which is different than if I just want to say some authors say, show me a screenshot, let's say, of your review, and then I will send you X. That's where Amazon's going to get you in trouble with that. So
I haven't done that.
yeah. Now you can give everybody who joins your launch team something. So when I work with authors, I often encourage them to host a private training for anyone who signed up to the launch team. And so that's kind of an added benefit. It could be a Q&A or a book club discussion or whatever it might be, a training. That's something that everyone gets access to. So there's definitely ways to sort of honor people's intentions around writing reviews. So I have 650 plus reviews in my 3 books. My last book has just recently hit 250 written reviews. And it is a process. It is a process. And I would also add that if you're listening, you're thinking, I should probably start getting reviews in my book. Yes, you probably should. Minimum, I would say, of 20, aim for 50 or more. It will separate you out from other people who've been writing books. And I would suggest that you try to get reviews from your likely prospects and referral partners. So Axel, you could probably go to the people who've been part of your mentorship program and say, hey, you all probably have a copy. I'm about to be part of this campaign, this Kindle cross promotion campaign. Between now and when that starts, would you please write a review? And you'd probably get a couple dozen reviews kind of up there because they love you, they trust you, they're part of your community. There's just, we have to give people a finite amount of time to do the action. It can't be like a one day in the future. So that's, I've seen people use the Kindle cross promotion campaign, which is how the 3 of you connected with me. I saw them use it as a way in the weeks leading up to the campaign to do a little bit of a kind of relaunch or like focused review process. And so Barrie, you and I are in the process right now of getting people on your launch team, giving them the advanced reader copy, collecting reviews in advance via Google form. And when your book gets published in a couple of days, then we'll be going back to the folks who wrote a review and saying, okay, like put it up on Amazon. And I want to ask Barrie what it was like getting those first few reviews as an author. You know, this is the first time you're hearing back from people about your book. The book's not even, it's not actually technically out there yet. It's just the people who have the advanced review copy reading it. What was it like to get those early reviews?
It felt very exciting because people gave me very good feedback about it, positive feedback, but phrased it in a way of how people could use the book and who it'd be useful for. And that was really appreciated. I actually had gotten a number of comments in the past because I had some readers read it in the past to give me feedback and comments. So I wanted to check in the past before I finished it, whether I was on track or not, whether it would be useful.
Great. So I hear two things. One is while you're writing the book, you were checking in with readers, people who would be benefiting from this book, and asking for their feedback along the way. I love that. When I was writing my second book, Small List, Big Results, Launch a Successful Offer no matter the size of your email list, boy, titles have gotten long. Okay, so when I was writing that, I realized that the process that I was going to document, I had always done in a coaching setting. So I would give my clients steps 1, 4, and 7. I didn't know it was 1, 4, and 7, but we would meet weekly to fill in the gaps. But when you're putting something out on paper, you can't say 1, 4, and 7. You have to do 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, 2C. And I really, those early readers, people who tested out my workshop materials, they are the ones who gave that great feedback. So I think that's so key, not to write in secret, which I think a lot of authors tend to do for various reasons, but I think you'll get a better product at the end if you do what Barrie did. And then Barrie, the other thing is we gave all of your launch team members prompts. So you said you liked hearing both how, like, what were their takeaways and who else would benefit from hearing it and reading this book. And we had some prompts in there. One was, what's one takeaway you're going to get from this book? What's something you're going to do differently because of this book? What's a line or a quote that really resonated with you in the book? And lastly, who would benefit from reading this book? And I always say you don't have to answer every prompt, but just answering in 2 or 3 sentences a couple of the prompts makes a really good review for someone who's thinking about buying the book. With all the AI nonsense out there, people writing books in an hour based on 8 prompts and all that. So we don't want to get into that world. But I do love that these prompts these prompts are leading to good reviews. Reviews are coming in. So reviews do take quite a bit of effort. But I feel like folks who are getting ready to launch a book should be thinking about this, because the reviews stay on the book sales page long after the book comes out. Now, other than getting reviews, I'm curious, Axel, was there something else that's been a bit of a challenge for you? Maybe that you needed to hire some help? What other part of the process of this author journey did you feel you needed a little bit of support or guidance, or was it smooth sailing for you?
No, I wouldn't say it was smooth sailing. Couple of different things. First, I want to quickly kind of reflect back on what you were saying in the context of reviews, because I got a really it made me laugh kind of situation. I've been working for a particular part of my business with somebody for probably more than 10 years. His name is Rick. And he is one of those people, like you earlier described, we know each other really well. It's almost like family. So he would obviously be one of the first people that I asked as soon as the book was out on Amazon to get it. And he did. And then we had a meeting totally unrelated. And he said, hey, by the way, I started reading your book and I really like it. But the other thing is, I think you're the only guy I know who actually wrote a book that I where I know someone who is an author. And I'm like, wow, it's kind of totally blown me away that this comes out after we have been really closely working together for 10 years and him telling me that. To the point of your question about help, I literally needed help from the Amazon guys directly, from the support team, which I have to say is pretty impressive, because for some strange reason, the wrong version of the description of the book got uploaded where there were placeholders at some spots. And one of my relatively anal German friends, that was the first thing that he pointed out. Not thank you and congratulations for the book, but hey, are you aware that there are some typos in the description? So they actually worked with me. They fixed it already for the paper book. I hope that by tomorrow that's also fixed for the Kindle. And then my VA is she is like a right hand. I call her the little elf, because when it came to your process of identifying the most likely people as prospects and supporters, we did the identification process. I shared that with you. But then I said to her, how do we do this to get the messages out? And she said, the best is probably mail merge with your email address. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. How does that work? She said, oh, forget about it. I just do it. So that kind of help, is definitely much appreciated.
Yeah, so my process includes using a service called YAM, Yet Another Mail Merge, YAMM.com, that merges a Gmail draft with a Google Sheet, much like anyone who's ever merged labels with a Word document and an Excel spreadsheet. So similarly to that, or anybody who's ever printed letters that had, dear so-and-so, or an address block at the top, all different ones. So similar to that, you can do a merged email. And I have a lot of reasons that I really like this process, but it's hyper personalized, allows you to really focus in on who's getting what message. And if they take a certain action, they don't get reminded to do it again. That's the hope. It's human error instead of doing things at scale. So thank you for that, though, Axel. It sounds like you had the right kind of team, a good process in hand, and congrats on getting it out there in the world. Like, that's always a big step. Marlo, I want to come to you with a different question. There's various ways to get the word out about a book. We were just saying, like, that's part of what we're trying to figure out. And I'm curious what your most effective strategy was that did lead to actual book sales, whether it was a spike on one day because you were at a conference speaking, or whether it was a bulk order of books, or you were part of a cross promotion. Was there anything that you did that kind of boosted visibility for your book and led to some extra book sales?
I think for me, it's been about the authenticity of telling my own story. So it's been putting it out there on social. I mean, I've been in 3 different careers. I was a TV news reporter, an entertainment lawyer, an HR business partner. Every single move, I actually increased my salary. I've been fired, I've been unfulfilled, I've been stressed, I've been, you name it, right? I've swirled about what I can do. And, I realized when I was asking myself that wrong question of what can I do versus what do I want to do, that lots of other people were asking that same question. So if I kept posting about that, right, what is it that you want to do? Most people can't answer that question. And like you were saying earlier, people look at me and they look at me with like, I have 3 heads when I ask that question, because they've never been asked that before. So I think that personal storytelling and appearing on podcasts, I tried to appear on as many podcasts as possible. That helped to spike a little bit. And then the thing that really spiked it was writing for HBR. So the book gave me the credibility to then become an HBR contributor, and I contribute regularly to HBR. But one of the articles that I wrote is, do I need a career coach? And that article alone not only spurned my business, but also spurns book sales. That one specific article. Yeah. So that having that credibility and then writing article, and it was an article they commissioned, right? They asked me to write certain things, but it just, if people don't want coaching, they find the book. And so that's what I see. I haven't really seen like podcast appearances like skyrocket book sales or any specific conference necessarily, but that's the one thing, the HBR writing.
Well, this is going back to the thing I knew I wanted to circle back to, this idea of like what doors open for you. And this sounds very rare. I just want to say Harvard Business Review is a high profile publication. They only print in their online edition 5 stories a day, 5 days a week. So if you do the math compared to the number of pitches they get, and the fact that their editors are doing 95% of their time something else other than editing, it's hard to get in. And I've had some success. I got a chance to work with a group of people who helped guide me through that, including my mentor, Dory Clark. She's been a longtime friend and guide around how to get into these spaces. But it is not easy to do. And so to not have to pitch, but to actually have them coming to you means that you nailed it on an intersection of what they think their audience needs and what services or value or info you can bring. Axel, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I totally second that. The point that I have realized more and more since I started my own podcast 3 years ago is that getting comfortable with describing who you are, what you do, what your book is about, what your business is about, whatever the thing might be. So putting a little bit of focus on your abilities and skill set in public speaking, I think is a really important kind of thing to consider, because for me, what has happened independent of the book, because it literally just came out on my wife's birthday on October 16th, so can't have massive expectations in 3 weeks or so, but I've been invited and asked to participate in quite a number of online and other conferences, even international. And when I ask, how did you find me, right? Like I'm getting an email and they say, hey, would you be open to have a conversation about this upcoming conference? Sometimes not even really, like the last one that I got invited for January has something to do with AI, which I'm definitely not an expert. And I asked, how did you find me? And they basically say something along the lines of, we heard you speak in this other conference. We heard you speak about your book. We heard you on another, like Marlo was saying, on another podcast, or on your own podcast, or a recording of something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
the worry of saying we bring in people where we're not quite sure if they can express themselves kind of concisely about the topic, whatever the topic is, I think it's worth spending a little bit of time
Mm-hmm.
on the ability to just fluently and without stress and
Yeah.
like you might have it, but if you can hide it, or just call it butterflies, it makes a huge difference. That's why I'm crunching and cringing when I actually watch the first few episodes of my podcast on YouTube, because I can't believe that was me, right?
Well, Axel, never judge yourself on your first 3 attempts to do anything. Judge yourself on your last 3 attempts.
Yeah,
Okay, we always
exactly.
get better as we go. Barrie, I want to come over to you. You mentioned that part of the reason you wrote this book was to help attract people who might want to work with you, executive directors, boards of directors of these nonprofits. So is there a clear call to action in the book? Is your email in the book? Is there a link to more information or a QR code or a resource or bonus content? So how have you made it? How would a reader who's like, oh, this is really good, how would they then think to get in touch with you? What was the pathway you left for them?
I made lots of options for people to get in touch with me. So I have a couple of pages of comments and quotes from people who have worked with me, what it's like to work with me. I have a page that talks about my marketing services, my branding services, my fundraising services, and my strategic planning services. I also have produced a companion workbook that goes with hate fundraising that people in my workbook, in my speaking, can use, or they can buy it independently. So in multiple ways, I've encouraged them to reach out to me and talk about what I can offer. And I've offered them a free time to talk with me.
I love that. I love that you made it clear that you are a multi-passionate, multi-expert in their space and can help in a lot of different ways. You bring a lot to the table. I think that we sometimes, I've seen people write a book and never have that in there, like not make it clear the connection. I've also seen authors selling books and someone not realize that they could also speak. like, wait, you could also come speak for us? Yes, I can. Like, how do we make that clear to people? So I love that you put some testimonials in there about what your work is like. You made it really clear all the kinds of work that you do. This idea of opening doors, this is one of the reasons that I want to suggest that authors spend time with other authors, because you get ideas from other authors about how to leverage the book that you have, whether that's a financial reward or media opportunities or branding ideas, or just even what Axel was saying was like, how do you get more comfortable speaking about you and your business? So in a moment, I'm going to actually come to each of you and ask you for what advice. We're going to start things off with Marlo. What advice would you give someone who is writing a book to help them grow their business? But first, here's a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Marlo, share with us either something you said earlier you want to repeat, or something new. You've got an author who's like, okay, this book is going to help me become a good speaker, become really well known as my coaching services, whatever it is that they're trying to sell. What advice would you offer someone like that?
Definitely define how the book is going to fit into your business strategy. When I wrote my first book, I was still working in corporate. I didn't have a business strategy, really. I just wanted to share knowledge and information. And so I knew it would establish credibility, but if that's your goal, that's fine. But do you want to generate business leads? Do you want to enhance your service offerings? Do you want to increase your visibility? Like, what is it that you want from the book? And I just wanted to write a book. That was my big thing, because people kept telling me to write a book. So I did. But then I think you need to use that to tailor your book to the exact audience you're trying to serve. That I got right? I knew exactly who this book was for. people who just can't do their jobs for 10, 20, 30, 40 more years, right? Who are just not fulfilled. And so you have to really know who your audience is. I would recommend a book coach. I've never had a book coach, but I think book coaches are great, especially if you've never written a book or you're not a writer. I mean, I'm a journalist. My first job, I was a journalist, so I am a writer. But if you're not, get a book coach. They'll help you get it all framed out. So I think that's important. And then definitely don't be afraid to put your actual techniques and tools and solutions in your book, because that's the thing that I think people want to write their book, but they don't want to give it all away. And I can promise you that it is not true. If somebody really needs your services, they'll come and get your services. Like, you're not giving it all away. It means they can't do it on their own. And that's okay if they need that extra support, because otherwise your book's going to be light. It's going to be too light, and it's not going to actually provide the value that I think people want to give. So that's what I would say. And the thing you just said, the call to action, I did not have a call to action. I raised my hand earlier. I didn't have a call to action at the end of my first book. Again, I was working in corporate. I didn't, have anything I wanted from people. I had a side coaching business, but it was a side business. So I would say that call to action is important. It reminds me to look at my new book to make sure it's in there. And so, but the book doesn't sell itself. So if you want to use it for something, make sure you have a purpose for it. And
so there's so much here I want to unpack, Marlo. The first thing I want to say is, what I heard is you wrote a book because you felt like you needed to write a book. Like, that is, I think, so common, which is why I always ask, like, what was the initial goal? Quite honestly, writing the darn thing. That's the goal. Like, my first book, I don't identify as a writer. Writing is not my strong suit. I didn't have a process for writing. So just getting it out of my head, right? And then you're like, wait, this is a good book. I want people to read this book. What does that look like? So
exactly.
I think the more you're part of a community of, whether it's a community of authors or a community of experts like our hub partners, the BizBook Publishing Hub, you will get some suggestions like what you're saying about how to even conceive of this, and to put the call to action in the book, and to have the plan for how it fits back into the business strategy. I know what initially drives all of us is that we feel like we have something compelling to share. But then what? So I love that.
Right, exactly. No, I agree with you 100%. And that's what it takes, is you want to take it to that next level. And, I left corporate about a year after after the book came out. And then I was like, okay, now what do I do with this? Right. I think I have a more decent business plan with the second book of what I'm planning to do with it, which I won't reveal here.
Check back with you in a year or so.
Process.
We'll check back in a year or so from now and see how that unfolded for you. Barrie, I'm going to come over to you. Barrie, would you have any particular advice for someone who's writing a book to help them grow their business?
Yes, definitely look at other books in your category, in your field, and see how those people approached your field. Do you have something to say that's unique or different? There are lots of groups online of people that get together, especially if you're writing a business book, or there are also people if you're writing romance novels and other types of novels. You can search online for all sorts of groups that can share the reading, give people an opportunity to give feedback about what might be of interest to them in whatever book you're considering. Mm-hmm. And then make sure that you follow up with them and share some of what you've written to see what they think.
Mm-hmm. This is like what we said earlier about, getting feedback as you're writing from people who would have an interest in your topic. Be careful, those who are listening. Don't take feedback from people who are not your ideal reader or your ideal client. I'm often coaching someone and they'll ask me a question and I'll say, well, I have an opinion, but I'm not your ideal client. So take what I say and other experts say as a grain of salt. Like, please go and verify and validate this question, this thing we're discussing with 4 or 5 people who are actually your ideal clients before you make a big decision. So that's great. Just kind of make sure you're writing the book more in public.
I'd also like to mention that there are different types of coaches out there. So I've used a publishing coach when I was actually working on writing my book, someone who was a developmental editor who could look at the material and give comments about how well it was constructed. I've worked with, more recently, editorial coaches who could then work with me on the process of getting the book finished and all of the pieces involved in getting the book ready to be beautiful. And then I'm working with Robbie on actually the book launch. So there are different coaches out there that have different values and do different things. And it's important to make sure, if you're looking for a coach, that you have a chance to find out what can they do and what do they not do.
That's great. And it's another example of something that people who are new to this process don't understand. Just even taking the word editor, there are so many different types of editors. So you just mentioned developmental editor, which is different than a copy editor, right? So different than a proofreader. So there's all these different pieces of editing. And unless you're really in this publishing process, it's not clear who you need and why and when. So surrounding yourself with people who can give you some ideas, referrals, suggestions. I think this is a really great use of having that author community. Thank you for that, Barrie. Axel,
talk to other authors like we're doing.
So Axel, let's just close up this question with you. What advice would you have for folks who are writing a book to grow a business?
Well, I would probably look at this relatively strategically as my advice, to first ask yourself, in your particular industry, how important is credibility and some level of verification of your expertise? Like in my field, when it comes to, working and advising other people about their money and their investing, that is an important thing. And I compared a little bit to, if in many cases, and Marlo is probably more of an expert in that, you have to basically prove that you can successfully conduct a study of something, of some thesis, and then write a successful paper about it, or a dissertation or something like that, and then you be awarded with a degree. To me, depending on your area of that you're in and what you're writing the book for and about, that is akin to that. So the book is basically, in a sense, showing that not only can you successfully go through the process of creating a book that represents what you are doing in your business, when we're talking about business books, but it gives you basically this additional credibility. And on top of that, I think, I'm really grateful to you, Robbie, that we know each other for years and you allowed me to get into this process. It's really also, for me, the realization that the book and the fact that it at some date comes out on Amazon is much more of a milestone than the achievement of a goal. So that, I would say, for anybody considering it, the milestone, yes, now it's public, but it is, for me, I'm giving myself the task to weave the fact that I wrote this book, what this book is about, where people can find this book, and what the purpose is in the sequence of free consumption, spending a little on getting the book, and maybe ultimately joining our program and our strategy. These things belong together. And I didn't used to do this because it didn't exist. Well, now it does exist. And it is, in my opinion, for anybody listening, a credibility boost. You prove that you can do something, but also something that you want to now continuously weave in as something that is available to the people that you serve.
So once an author, always an author. What's the best day to start marketing your book? Yesterday. If you missed that date, try starting today, and then every tomorrow after. The other thing I want to echo that you were mentioning there, Axel, is that your publication date, the date that it is available for sale on, let's say, Amazon, is not the date that you need to launch the book. If you're working with a publisher, they often call this, your release date, but you can have a launch date 2.5, 3 weeks later, and you can use the in-between weeks to get the launch team to post their reviews. So that soft launch period is when the only people who really know the book is available for sale are people that you're been sort of supporting through writing and publishing a book review for you on Amazon. So by the time you do announce from the rooftops that your book is now widely available, it is a successful book. It's got the reviews, it's got some sales, maybe it's hit number 1, all those good milestones, but you've done your job of launching the book. So what I focus on is between the publication and the and the marketing piece, which is the launch piece. You can find about me and all the other experts that are part of the hub, the BizBook Publishing Hub, at bizbookpublishinghub.com, which is also where you're going to find out about our free virtual networking events for writers and authors that we hold throughout the year. You find all the show notes from today's show, so you can get links to all the great places that people can be found. Speaking of which, Axel, where can people find you and follow your work?
The easiest is go to ideawealthgrower.com and push the button. Yeah, the button says Discovery Call, and here we are talking together.
I love it. Barrie, how can people find you and follow your work?
They can put in my name into their URL, into their browser, Barrie Atkin, BarrieAtkin.
Fantastic.
.com.
And we'll put that link there. And we also have your LinkedIn link as well. Excellent. And we'll have a link to your book on the show notes as well. And then Marlo, how can people find you and follow your work?
Yep, my website is www.marlolyonscoaching.com, and just click on contact.
Fantastic. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Panelists, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate you.
Thank you.